well, on the planning commission, I was trying to do the same thing, protect other people's neighborhoods from bad choices.
Right.
So, yeah, and I got on the commission because I wanted to help things south of 50. So,
Okay. Wow.
you know, stop
So
the
have you
same
always
things from
kind of
happening.
wanted to be, like, what got you into kind of the planning commission and
My dad
council
was on
and-
the planning commission when I was
Okay.
young. I grew up in Sunnyvale,
Yeah.
and a lot of bad decisions were made back then. I don't know if you know that area.
Yeah,
But,
somewhat,
you
yeah.
know, it went from being rural and orchards and some housing to literally being paved over.
Right.
And, you know,
So
we
basically
need
we got
housing.
to learn from Sunnyvale's mistakes through
Right.
you.
Well, a lot of places have done the same thing. And we can just develop better. And we can build housing that is
Yep.
affordable for young people.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wait until you're 35 or
Yep.
40 to buy
Yep.
a house. You know, there's duplexes and condos and townhomes.
Which is great because, you know, one of Folsom is known for is the trails and the activity. And so, you know, it'd be nice to live here and not have to travel in.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know that's well, those are some of the things I worked on. I was on the Parks Commission
Yeah.
when a lot of these trails and parks were built.
Uh-huh.
We had more money at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And you know, participated in a lot of planting trees along the corridors. We actually, on Friends of Folsom Parkway, is a local organization. I was telling you all this because I think it'll be helpful for you living here to know what else goes on.
Thank you.
But Friends of Folsom Parkway actually built some of the trails before the city got a person who was good at grants on board and was
Sure.
able to get a lot of grant money to pave them and make them.
So
you know.
back when they were getting the grants, was it still the same kind of income bracket? Because I was at the budget meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that, at the library. And they were talking about how one reason it's harder for us to get grants is because we don't fit some of the disadvantaged community type metrics.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back then we were able to do it.
Well, and they weren't necessarily related at that time
I
to
see.
having a disadvantaged community.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of trail building and those kinds of grants are done because they reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the big state goals is to reduce greenhouse
Sure.
gas
Yep.
emissions statewide and help stop some of this climate change.
Yes, definitely.
And I've been chair of the Sierra Club for about 10 years, but as
Wow.
a nurse practitioner, I got interested in the environment and people's health and how how the environment impacts people's health.
Interesting.
You think about asthma, you know, in
Yeah.
kids. And the Sacramento area has the 7th worst air conditions in the entire country.
Yeah, we also get all that wildfire smoke trapped here sometimes too.
Yeah, when we have the wildfires, it definitely traps here. And a lot of people say, well, all that blows in from the Bay Area and Sacramento. Yeah, but do we need to make it worse here?
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
So
I mean,
as a
I could
Sierra-
go on forever. I'm just kind of trying to put
Sure,
the
sure,
pieces
sure.
together for you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming.
And the water issue, I won't keep you much longer.
Sure, yeah.
We have enough water allocated.
Right, including south of 50.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it wasn't supposed to be enough to cover south of 50 because the usage used to be higher until they started all the water conservation
Yeah.
measures for people. South of 50 was supposed to have found its own water source. That developer had bought water rights from the Natomas area north of Sacramento, but there was no way to get that water here or any trade to be made.
Got it.
So they came up, he and some of the council members at the time came up with this plan. If we fix the leaky pipes, we have enough to send to south of 50. And it's anticipated to be enough water until the build out, which isn't for another 8 to 10 years there.
Okay.
But in a drought year, it's not enough water.
I see.
And when we don't have enough water, we get our water from the American River,
Sure, yep.
which, you know, Folsom Lake, et cetera. Well, so do the other water agencies in the region. So if we're low on water, they're also low on water.
Definitely. So
And-
even if we think we can handle it, maybe they can't handle it, they'll take more, and then it's harder for us to all
Yeah.
balance.
Well, nobody can take more. Everybody has a set amount of water rights.
Got it.
You know, I'm not going to name all the numbers because
Sure.
they're really complex, but I've been on the water forum for the region for the last 5 years, and I'm also on the water visioning committee for the city. So what happens though is there's not enough to draw more into Folsom Lake or take out of Folsom Lake for the city if other people are also getting water from the river, which is depleted because we're in a drought.
Sure.
So in 2015, Folsom Lake was down within almost a couple hundred feet of being below the intake valves.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I say we have enough water allocated. Do we
Right.
always have that water available?
When times are good or normal, we have enough water, but we don't know what climate change is going to bring or other
Right.
things where maybe it gets quite low.
Right.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
And we don't have groundwater in Folsom.
Got it.
You know, there's other deals that we're looking at making on the city water visioning thing about, where maybe we could get some groundwater from South Sacramento area, but the infrastructure isn't in place at this time to draw
Right, to
on
get
that.
it and to transport it.
So it's a
Yeah.
really complicated thing. So you just can't blanket say we have enough water.
Yeah, I get that.
So-
There was one other thing I was wondering about. Intel is reducing its footprint. There's some other folks that are reducing their footprint. I know in the Folsom Times article you were talking about different ways to repurpose. You
Right.
could survey to repurpose. Did you have any other details as far as maybe specific hopes, if not plans are hard, but hopes for what kind of business might come or what kind of hub we might be if Intel continues to reduce their footprint here?
Yeah, I don't have specific things in mind, but there are a lot of startup companies, as you know, down in the Bay Area. It's cheaper for them to come
Yeah.
here than to have their employees live down there. And we really need somebody with the expertise and outreach to do that kind of work.
To draw them in.
And it isn't necessarily a city council person. We should have a economic development person that the city employs to do that kind of work, because the chamber isn't prepared to do that kind of work either.
Got it.
The chamber doesn't do a whole lot of outreach. Mostly what they do is if you have a business and you contact the Chamber of Commerce and, hey, I'd like to bring my business here. They're like, oh yeah, come on board, But reaching out to larger companies that can use these giant facilities
Sure.
takes a certain level of expertise.
Right. And they have certain needs and maybe hopes
Right.
for what the city they'll land in.
Right. And they also have, there's this business park back here. Have you
Yep.
driven through? You've driven through there.
Yep.
It's in at least 7 or 8 of those buildings are almost entirely empty.
Yeah.
SMUD is moving their new facilities up here. They're building a space closer to the river.
Right.
There were some acreage there, so they're going to move about 1,000 employees up here.
Okay. So we do have the space already for businesses, and maybe it sounds like startups and folks moving from the Bay Area looking for a place to land could come here.
Right. I mean, think about how do you match a building that's already in existence as it's large and
Right.
empty with a business that needs it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's challenging.
Yeah. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
I try to make sense. But I research a lot of things. I just, I did practice medicine for 31 years, and I've always been interested in planning, and I've served on the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Planning Commission, so I know how things
Work.
get built.
Yeah.
And how things get approved.
Right.
And I have my ideas about what I think needs to be done differently
Definitely.
in those areas. So
Was there any, as far as how you approach your decisions in local government, is there any similarities to the nurse practitioner training?
well, in that it's really necessary to keep up on current research
Sure.
and current practices. And
Yeah.
that's a practice that can apply across the board to a lot of things. So, in terms of being, when I was on the Planning Commission, I attended a lot of conferences that were put on by the League of California Cities. And the League has almost all of the cities within the state belong to the League. And the League collects information and data, and then has a couple presentations a year for planning commissioners and city leaders.
About what works.
On current
and- yeah.
trends and what's working in certain cities in the state and what isn't working. And there's a great new organization called Strong Towns. So it's strongtowns.com.
Okay.
That talks about building and how you can build more sustainably, and how when you do sprawl, especially if it's leapfrog type sprawl, that really hurts your economy.
Sure.
So
Because people just drive through. There's nowhere to stop, really.
right,
Yeah.
right. So you have these disconnected communities with no local resources. Like this one's great because it's walkable.
Yeah.
So I love this community. That's why I've stayed here. Well, you can walk to a lot of places, but you get out in the other areas in Folsom, and you have to get in your car for 5, 10, 15 minutes.
That's very true. Yeah.
And the young people in your age group, like my daughter, they want to be in places that are walkable.
Definitely. Walkable, bikeable, all
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, thank you.
So that was a lot of ranting there.
Yeah, no. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover or talk about?
I don't know. You asked me. Are we filming or are we not filming?
Oh, yes. We are filming, yes.
Okay, great. I like it when I can film and not worry. It's like, oh, did I say something?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. So right now we're just talking about some of the questions I already had, and thank you
Okay.
for answering them.
Yeah, you're welcome. And
Yeah.
you had asked about what is it like to campaign?
Sure, yeah.
It's a lot of work. And
You must
I
meet
ran-
hundreds of people, thousands maybe.
well, I do, because
Yeah.
I've been walking since June.
Yeah.
And it was very hot in June, so when it gets to be 105, 110, you just
Oh,
can't
yeah.
keep walking if you
Sure.
want to survive.
Yeah.
My best friend is Gatorade.
Yeah.
Some days.
Bring some extras for everyone else and bring it and say, hey, this is
Right.
from Barbara Leary.
Right. Yeah, that would have been a good campaign trick. A little bottle of Gatorade.
Yep. Reskin the bottle.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, no, I really like that part the best because I like going around and listening to people what their concerns are, what they have to say about, their city, what
Right.
visions they have for the future. And, it confirms where we need to focus our energy, at least for me, because there's different forces at work all
Right.
of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, one group may have a stronger influence over decision making and over the council. And the residents should have a very strong voice in that. And the residents are not always going to like what's being presented or what has to happen.
Right.
For example, the city has a need, like every city in California, to provide more housing. And that's called the acronym is Regional Housing Needs Allocation. So the city is given this number of units that you're supposed to at least have the capacity to provide over a 7 to 8 year period, and then work to provide those units.
Got it.
And the way that most people refer to that is the RENA numbers. So
And that goes up over time.
it goes up over time depending on the needs that the state
I see.
provides.
Yep.
So what happens is, to meet those numbers, a lot of times rental housing is being built instead of housing that people can buy.
Right.
And that's it's a difficult spot to be in because the cities need to provide that housing, or at least show that they're making that effort.
So they can't say no unless there's a better option to point to.
Right. At this point, I think that we can be more directive about what kind of housing we want to see. For example, a lot of people in my age range have kids that are ready to buy a home but can't buy one here and don't want to keep paying high rents.
Sure.
And so they're looking elsewhere for homes. So then we don't bring up, the next generation of workers and that we need here.
Right. Which Folsom can definitely provide resources for, like we were
Right.
talking about the buildings earlier.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So that's a really difficult problem to solve. I've been talking to developers for a few years about that. When I was on the planning commission, and even before then, about how can we get this done here. And they say there's a lot of obstacles in their way, such as some state mandates for ensuring what they built for a certain length of time.
Right.
But those are areas that we ought to be looking at, working with our elected state officials on changing.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, the state has a lot of things to think about too, like wildfires and things like that. How do we prepare
Right.
for those?
Right.
But thank you. I'll end the podcast there.
Oh, okay. Thank
We'll
you.
keep
That was
talking.
fast.
Yeah.